In June 2017, I was at a wedding of a friend. It was the first time one of my friends got married. It felt very grown up. It was an outside wedding. The ceremony was in the forest, very short and sweet, and the reception and party was at her parents' beautiful mansion. I was really happy for my friend, but I was also struggling a lot with my own life, trying to cope with everything, which I then mostly did by smoking a lot of weed. It kept me more tame and it helped me in keeping up the facade. And I know that partly that facade was my fault because I had learned to not show any emotions. The only emotions people would ever really see of me was happiness and anger. Anything else was very scary for me to share. Since I can remember, I have been praised by adults and peers how strong I am, how nothing seems to rattle me, nothing ever catches me off guard. I've been told that they see me as a rock, sturdy and unshakable. And for a long time, it made me feel very proud. But it also always felt very much like, oh my God, what if they find out how weak I actually am? Like, it felt like a lot of pressure to keep up the facade. And I don't blame other people for this pressure. That's probably mostly on me because I am the one who held up this facade for so long. The first time that I was aware how well my facade worked was in 2009, when I was 18 years old. I was on a lunch break from college and I was grabbing some food with a friend slash classmate. And as we left the store, I felt super self-conscious and really insecure, and I was just talking down on myself in my head about how bad of a person I was for letting myself get so much more chunky again. And as I was thinking about this, my classmate suddenly asks me, "How are you so confident?" And I was like, what? And I said, I'm not. And she said, surprised that I always seem so confident and that she admired like how much I don't seem to care what anybody thinks. And I didn't really know what to say, so I just said like, yeah, I don't really care. And I changed the subject because it made me uncomfortable. But while I was uncomfortable, I was also very proud of myself that people couldn't see past the facade because that meant that it's a good facade. And I created the facade, so maybe I can be good at something. And I created that facade as a child because I always thought it was easier and better for others to just pretend I was not able to be hurt by anything, physically or emotionally. And it felt to me that when I showed a dent in the facade, people would be quick to reject me. And I was very scared of being rejected. So anyway, the wedding party was great. Everybody is just celebrating the love of this beautiful couple, delicious food, fun dancing. And after an afternoon and evening of drinking, I found myself by the pool. Yes, there was a pool around 11 p.m. with one of the bridesmaids. And she was a lot more drunk than me. And she had already throughout the evening kept coming up to me how much she admired me and how beautiful I was and how confident I am, how much she would want to be like me. And she kept going on her drunken rant, how she admired my strength. And she just kept asking me like, how do I do it? And honestly, it really got on my nerves, partly because of distrust, because especially at that time, because I was a lot chunkier then, I always felt like if people would emphasize my beauty too much, that it was because they would maybe think I've never heard that before because I was a fat bitch. But that is literally also something that I just made up. But partly it was also because I do not have an answer. I'm just doing my best, but I have to hold up the facade, right? So I'm just saying whatever, like, but she kept going. You're so this, you're so that. How do you do it? And eventually I just told her, listen, it's all a facade. I am not a real person. I am just doing what I need to do to survive. And she started crying, sobbing actually, because somehow I had become her hope. And she just keeps going on about how I was her last hope and saying like, how can I say to her that it's just a facade? How can I do this to her? And throughout all of this, I'm just kind of like emotionlessly staring at her like, what the fuck is going on right now, right? Like, I'm at a wedding. This is supposed to be a fun time. This girl corners me and starts projecting shit onto me. I literally only met her like 4 hours before this moment. And she just keeps sobbing. And now I have to fix this because I don't want to be the bitch who made a bridesmaid cry. And I don't want to ruin this fun evening for my friend, the bride. And here is a girl who seemingly had everything going for her and a seemingly smooth sailing childhood, and somehow she is looking at me to solve her problems. She's looking at me like I am God and I'm supposed to give her the answers to life. And all I kept thinking was like, she has everything going for her. Why would she want to trade places with me? I had nothing. All I had was my pride. And even after mentioning things like, like, I've had a hard life, I really don't know what to say, I have to be strong, I don't really know what else to do or be, I don't really have a choice but to be who I am, feeling actually quite vulnerable at that moment. And she looks at me with eyes full of tears and she said that I crushed her dream. And you know what I did? I actually held this sobbing girl in my arms and comforted her until she stopped crying, which is pure insanity. But I did all I knew to do. I held up the facade. And I have had many similar situations like this. Like, I have had to comfort people at festivals, New Year's Eve parties, at work, anywhere, because they wanted to so badly identify with me when I never did, and still don't understand why they would want that. Everything people admire about me is built on struggle, pain, and survival. Why would you want to identify with that? And they always looked at me to give them the answers when I'm also just here at this party to get fucked up and forget my own problems. And I had many. And the facade has also made me keep people at arm's length a lot, because if I can see or feel that they put me high up on a pedestal, I know I will never be able to live up to it. It makes me uncomfortable. Also because it seems that they then refuse to see me as I am. And I think that's not fair. And while the facade at this point, I would say, is not truly just a facade anymore, it is who I am. It is not all I am. And I still notice it now when I meet new people, and I like them too, because I like people, but I can feel the pedestal, and I can feel it when my humanness knocks me down, and I never like it. I've never gotten used to it. And I just want to be seen as human too, because am I not? And while the bridesmaid dream at that point was to be strong, confident, and admired by strangers, my dream at that point was to just be accepted for who I am. Not for who others want me to be, not for the maybe perfect version that they see on the outside, not the safe for work version, not the minimizing myself person, not the person I can be for others, but to be accepted for who I am, or maybe even despite who I am. So I tried even harder to do my best to be the person that everyone expected me to be. Sturdy, strong, unshakable, and confident. And like Atlas, I kept my mouth shut, and I continued to carry the weight of the world on my back, because I had no other choice. I really like cliches because they are just so true. The grass is always greener on the other side. I wrote this journal entry yesterday, and it was a lot longer actually. It was like 10 pages. And I felt so vulnerable writing this, and I cried. And that means that talking about this subject clearly still was very emotionally heavy for me. And as I'm going through the text now, I felt so different about this topic. Yesterday it felt so heavy, so burdensome. Like, I'm mentioning feeling like Atlas. Like, what the fuck? That is so heavy, girl. And it's because that is how it felt yesterday. And every day before that. And I could really feel like the emotionally, like the heaviness of everything that I've been carrying with me for so many years. Reading it today, it does not feel so heavy. And I look at myself with more kindness, and as a bridesmaid with more kindness. And when I've said before, this shit is therapeutic for me, I meant it, okay? Because I wrote 10 pages, and then I didn't look at it anymore. And then today, as I said, it feels so much lighter. And I can see the nuances better, and I can see how far I have come. Because yesterday, as I wrote this, I felt the way that I've always felt about this topic, very negatively against myself and other people for them seeing only the facade. And I felt very resentful. And I do think that while there are people who will choose to not see past your outer layer for their own personal reasons, for the most part, it's like, how can people accept you if you are not sincere about who you are? If you do not give them a chance to be kind when they see you as you are? And I kind of touched on this in episode 9, I believe. And while I have come a long way of being strong enough to be vulnerable with people, aka being myself, it is still quite difficult. And I'm also now realizing, like, girl, like, you really thought you were alone in this feeling for so long, but everybody has a facade for the outside world. That's literally just the outer layer of your personality, and the one you show in your daily life until you meet people that you want to show new layers to. That's why you say the facade is a part of you. It's because it is. So now I'm left wondering if the facade is not fake. Why do I have so much trouble seeing myself as others see me?